Have you ever been judged before you even opened your mouth? Imagine stepping onto a plane, exhausted after a lifetime of hard work, only to be told you don't belong in the seat you paid for. No shouting, no scene. Just the quiet sting of being seen is less. That's what happened to Dr. Maya Caldwell, a black CEO who built her life on grace, intellect, and perseverance. In just 6 minutes, her dignity was tested, and her decision changed not only one woman's fate, but the conscience of an entire company. What would you have done in her place? Would you have walked away in silence, or stood up, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever been made to feel invisible? This is not a story about revenge. It's about power, choice, and the courage to respond with integrity when the world tries to make you small. Stay with us, because what happens next will make you rethink what justice truly looks like. If this story moves you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, where every story reminds us that respect and humanity should never be optional. Ma'am, there must be a mistake. Seat 1A is for first-class passengers. The words cut through the soft murmur of the cabin like the snap of a rubber band. Dr. Maya Caldwell froze halfway down the aisle. She held her phone in one hand, her boarding pass glowing clearly on the screen. Her other hand gripped the strap of a faded leather tote, the kind she had carried for years, comfortable, practical, nothing fancy. The attendant's name tag caught the cabin light Rachel Monroe, blue uniform pressed sharp, smile tight enough to cut glass. All around, the other passengers looked up, some with curiosity, some with the quiet smirk of people who already thought they understood the story. Maya's voice stayed calm. I believe this is my seat. Rachel didn't move aside. Her tone turned sugar sweet, the kind used to dismiss children or strangers who didn't belong. I'm sure you believe that, ma'am, but perhaps you should double-check. Seat 1A is for executive class guests. Behind her words hid the message Maya had heard too many times. People like you don't sit here. The air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. Maya could feel the weight of a dozen quiet judgments pressing down on her hoodie, her jeans, her natural curls tied back with a plain black band. Rachel folded her arms. Please step aside so we can continue boarding. A man 2 rows back whispered to his wife. Figures. They always try to sneak up front. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. Every syllable carried a history heavier than luggage. Maya's heartbeat stayed steady. Her father had taught her long ago, never let humiliation choose your reaction. She smiled, polite but unwavering. I paid for this seat. If there's an error, it's in your system, not my ticket. Rachel blinked, almost startled by the calmness. Then the smile returned, thinner this time. I'll verify with operations. Until then, please wait in the aisle. The narrow aisle felt even smaller now. Maya could see the curtain to first class just a few inches away, her seat beyond it, glimmering in the soft golden light that somehow always looked warmer up there. A young attendant named Brian Foster hovered uncertainly nearby, holding a tablet. Rachel, he said quietly, the system shows her in 1A. Rachel snatched the tablet, scrolling fast. It's marked red. Duplicate assignment. Probably another upgrade glitch. Her words floated like smoke thin, but poisonous. From 1B, a silver-haired man in a tailored navy suit looked over his glasses. Another free rider, he muttered. They really need to tighten security. A few passengers chuckled softly. It was the kind of laughter that cut the skin without leaving visible marks. Maya stood still. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was control. Behind her, Leah James, her young assistant, pushed through the boarding crowd. "Excuse me," Leah said firmly. "Dr. Caldwell was checked in hours ago. There's no mistake." Rachel's head snapped around. "Please return to your seat, miss. We'll handle this." But Leah didn't move. She raised her phone, the small red light blinking. "This is for record keeping," she said. The quiet click of the camera was enough to shift the air. Passengers straightened, pretending not to watch, but every eye was on them now. Maya exhaled slowly. The cabin's hum grew louder in her ears, the rolling cartwheels, the distant chatter, the heartbeat of injustice repeating itself once again. Rachel gestured toward the economy curtain. "Ma'am, please step aside." Maya's gaze met hers, steady as stone. "I've spent my life following rules written by people who don't believe I belong. I'm done stepping aside." The words were quiet, almost gentle, but they carried weight. The kind that bends rooms. For a long second, no one breathed. Then Rachel forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Well, we'll just see what corporate says." She turned sharply, tapping her radio. "Control. This is Lead Attendant Monroe on Flight 237. Possible unauthorized passenger in first class. Requesting verification." Maya didn't flinch. She glanced at Leah and gave a small nod. Leah whispered, "You want me to call legal?" "Not yet," Maya replied. "Let's give her a chance to show the world what bias looks like in a uniform." The line wasn't angry. It was weary years of endurance condensed into one measured sentence. A toddler somewhere in the back began to cry. Even the child seemed to sense something unfair was unfolding. Rachel stood tall at the front of the cabin, pretending confidence. She adjusted her scarf, straightened her badge, and smiled at the watching eyes like a performer stepping back into her role. But inside her chest, irritation had begun to twist into something else, a need to prove she was right. Because if she was wrong, it wouldn't just be a mistake, it would be a mirror. Maya finally stepped closer, the floor trembling slightly under the weight of passengers still boarding. The hum of the engines grew stronger. She stopped just an arm's length from Rachel and said quietly, "If you're going to humiliate me, do it quickly. The world is recording." Leah's phone light blinked red again. The cabin fell silent. Even Rachel hesitated, eyes darting from the lens to the woman in front of her, the woman who, despite the hoodie and worn sneakers, held herself like someone who signed paychecks, not tickets. A bead of sweat slid down Rachel's temple. She didn't know it yet, but in that instant, the balance of power had already shifted, and 6 minutes later, it would shift forever. For a moment, no one moved. The hum of the engines filled the silence like distant thunder. Then, slowly, the whispers began. "She's probably in the wrong section," someone muttered. Another voiced security should handle it. Each word was a needle in the quiet air. "Dr." Maya Caldwell stood motionless, her boarding pass still glowing faintly on her phone. She had spent years mastering the art of composure, but there was always a moment, the flicker of disbelief that reminded her how far the world still had to go. Rachel Monroe cleared her throat. "Until we confirm, ma'am, please step back to the aisle." Her smile was crisp and professional, but her eyes betrayed something colder. Maya didn't move. She wasn't defiant for drama. She simply refused to shrink anymore. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said softly. Rachel's patience thinned. "Ma'am, you're obstructing boarding. Please cooperate, or I'll have to call security." Before Maya could answer, the older man in 1B, Charles Denton, leaned back in his leather seat. "Just let her sit and coach," he said loudly. "Some people always think the rules don't apply to them." A ripple of uneasy laughter followed. A woman 2 rows back whispered, "That's not right," but her voice drowned beneath the murmurs. Leah James rose from her seat again, phone still recording. "You're embarrassing yourself," she told Rachel. Dr. Caldwell paid for her seat. The system made a mistake, not her. Rachel turned sharply. "Turn that off." She snapped. "Filming crew members is a violation of airline policy." Leah didn't flinch. "So is discrimination." The red recording light blinked, steady and unblinking, capturing every breath. Rachel's cheeks flushed. "Brian," she barked, "call ground control. I'm not dealing with this circus." Brian hesitated, his fingers hovering over the screen. "Rachel, maybe." Now she interrupted, voice sharp enough to slice the air. He sighed, pressing the button. "Ground control. This is Flight 237. We have a possible seating discrepancy in first class." The words "possible seating discrepancy" hung in the cabin like a bitter perfume. Maya turned her gaze toward the window, away from the staring eyes. The clouds outside glowed faintly against the evening sun, golden edges fading into gray. She thought of her father again, how calm he'd been even when people doubted him, even when the world tried to shrink him down. Her fingers tightened on the phone. "You taught me patience," she thought. "But you also taught me when patience becomes surrender." Rachel leaned closer. "Look," she said, lowering her tone. "If there's really a glitch, they'll sort it out. But standing here making a scene isn't helping anyone." Maya's lips curved slightly. Making a scene, she repeated. "You made it the moment you assumed my seat couldn't be mine." The cabin fell quiet again. Even the air seemed to pause, waiting. Charles Denton scoffed. "Oh, come on," he said, swirling the champagne in his glass. "You people love to play the victim. Just sit down somewhere and stop making trouble." A woman across the aisle gasped. "That's uncalled for." Rachel didn't correct him. She stood perfectly still, pretending she hadn't heard. Maya turned her head toward Charles, her eyes calm but piercing. "It's first class. Mr. Denton," she said evenly. "Not a caste system." Leah's phone trembled slightly in her hand. She could feel the energy shifting, thickening with the kind of tension that precedes truth. Rachel crossed her arms. "If you can't provide proof immediately, I'll have to remove you before takeoff." "Proof?" Maya asked quietly. "It's right here." She held out her phone again. Boarding pass displayed clearly, Dr. Maya Caldwell, seat 1A, confirmed. Rachel studied it, jaw tight. Anyone could fake that. Brian looked uneasy. "Rachel, maybe it's she cut him off again. Do your job." "Brian." He swallowed hard and fell silent. From his seat near the window, Marcus Dale, the journalist, felt his pulse quicken. He'd seen this story before, different cities, different faces, same script, but there was something different about this woman. Her stillness wasn't fear, it was strength. He quietly started recording from his phone. Public record. He whispered. Rachel reached for the intercom, ready to call security. That was when Leah whispered to Maya, "Should I call legal?" Now Maya shook her head. "Not yet. Let her finish what she started." Her voice wasn't angry. It was heavy with something deeper. Fatigue. The kind that comes from fighting the same war 1,000 times in silence. The minutes stretched like rubber bands pulled too tight. 2, 3, 4. Passengers grew restless. A few turned on their phones, scrolling as if distraction could erase discomfort. Others simply stared, waiting for someone else to decide what justice looked like. Brian's tablet suddenly beeped. He frowned, scrolling quickly. Rachel. he said slowly. "The system just updated." Dr. Caldwell's seat was flagged by a duplicate scan this morning. It's showing her as the rightful passenger. Rachel froze. The words hit harder than turbulence. What she said sharply, "That can't be right." Brian showed her the screen. "It's right here. System error." The duplicate was voided. For a second, the proud posture collapsed. Then Rachel straightened again, voice colder. "Still, I need to verify identity. Protocol requires a visual match." Maya's tone stayed calm. "You already verified it when you saw my name, didn't you? You just didn't believe it could belong to me." Her words were soft, but they landed like thunder. Even Charles Denton fell silent. Rachel's fingers trembled as she adjusted her scarf. "You people always pull that card when things don't go your way," she said. Before she could stop herself, gasps rippled through the cabin. Leah's hand shot up, camera steady. "Say that again," she said quietly. Rachel's face drained of color. "That's not what I meant." Maya looked at her steadily. "No," she said. "You meant exactly what you said." The cabin door remained open. The gate agent appeared, confused by the commotion. Passengers shifted, whispering to one another. The phrase "you people" echoing through their minds like a slur from another century. For a moment, Rachel seemed to shrink, realizing too late that this wasn't just another passenger dispute. It was a stage, and she had written her own downfall. Captain Ethan Ward stepped out from the cockpit, brow furrowed. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Rachel straightened immediately. "Unauthorized passenger in first class. Captain, but we're resolving it." The captain turned toward Maya. "Your name?" "Ma'am, Maya Caldwell." Something in his expression shifted. Recognition, surprise, maybe even regret. "Dr. Caldwell," he said. "As in the Caldwell who developed Medivance Diagnostics," Maya nodded once. "Yes, Captain." "The same." Rachel's eyes widened. The whispers turned into a low wave of shock rolling through the cabin. The captain exhaled slowly, his tone softening. "I see." Then he turned toward Rachel. "I'll handle this from here." But Maya lifted a hand. "No, Captain. Let her finish. I want to see how far this airline's training goes." The captain hesitated. "Unsure. Dr. Caldwell." "It's fine," Maya said. "I'm patient." And for the next 2 minutes, everyone watched as Rachel Monroe tried to recover the authority she'd already lost. The seconds crawled by. 6 minutes since the first accusation. 6 minutes that would change everything. Marcus stopped recording for a moment, lowering his phone. "The world's going to see this," he whispered to himself. Leah nodded, eyes fixed on Maya. "They already are." The captain glanced once more at the screen in Brian's hand, then at the woman standing firm and silent. He realized what many hadn't yet, that justice had already boarded this flight, and it was sitting in 1A. Captain Ethan Ward's presence seemed to calm the murmuring passengers. His deep voice, seasoned by years of authority in the air, filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking off shortly. Please stay seated." But the tension remained, thick as the recycled air that hummed through the vents. Maya stood motionless, still holding her phone with the open boarding pass. The digital letters glowed faintly in the dim cabin light. Rachel avoided looking at her, fussing with a clipboard she didn't need. Her composure was slipping, thread by thread. Leah stepped closer, her tone firm but not raised. "Captain, the system already confirmed Dr. Caldwell's seat. It's all in the airline's database. Would you like me to forward the confirmation email to you?" Captain Ward nodded. "Please do. I'll handle this." His gaze flicked toward Rachel. "Miss Monroe, you can step aside." Rachel's chin lifted slightly, her pride flaring. "Sir, with respect. I followed standard verification procedures. We've had imposters before." Leah let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Imposter? She's literally listed as a shareholder of this airline." The captain's brows furrowed. Shareholder Maya finally spoke again, her voice low, steady. "Yes, Medivance Systems holds 10% of Skylinx's digital infrastructure contracts. I helped design the security algorithms that check your passengers in." A stunned silence rippled through the rows. Even Charles Denton leaned forward now, his smugness faltering. "Wait, you're that Caldwell? The AI woman?" She met his gaze evenly. "The same one you read about in Forbes last year." The color drained from his face. He looked down, suddenly fascinated by his glass of champagne. Rachel's hands fidgeted at her sides. "I didn't realize." "That's the problem," Maya said quietly. "You didn't realize because you didn't look beyond your assumptions." Marcus Dale's phone was still recording, though he kept it lowered discreetly. His journalist instincts tingled. He knew when a story had shifted from incident to revelation. What he was witnessing now wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a mirror held up to an entire culture. The captain exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Dr. Caldwell, I sincerely apologize for this confusion. I'll see to it that your seat is properly secured." But Maya shook her head. "No, I don't want a quiet correction. Captain, I want transparency. If this can happen to me, a person with power and visibility, imagine what happens to those without either." The statement landed heavy. Several passengers lowered their eyes, uncomfortable. The truth was a hard thing to look at directly. Rachel's voice trembled, a mixture of defensiveness and disbelief. "I didn't mean anything by it. I was doing my job." Maya turned toward her, not angry, but deeply weary. Doing your job would mean treating every passenger with respect, not suspicion. Doing your job would mean checking data before judging faces. Leah gently touched Maya's arm, her voice soft. "You don't owe her an explanation." "I'm not giving one," Maya said. "I'm giving her a chance to understand." The captain's radio buzzed. "Ground control confirms Dr. Caldwell's credentials," came the voice through static. System glitch flagged her ID due to an input error at check-in. Maya allowed herself a thin smile. "A system error," she said. "Ironically, one my company warned your tech division about last quarter." Rachel took a small step back, her confident posture unraveling. I didn't know." "That's the second time you've said that," Maya replied, eyes unwavering. You didn't know. You didn't check. You didn't listen. But you decided." Her words weren't loud, but they cut deeper than shouting ever could. Brian shifted uncomfortably, guilt shadowing his young face. "Ma'am," he said quietly to Rachel, "maybe you should apologize." Rachel shot him a look that could have frozen fire. "This is not your place." "Brian." Captain Ward's voice rose just enough to regain command. "That's enough. Ms. Monroe, I'll take responsibility from here." He turned to Maya again. "Dr. Caldwell, if you wish to file a complaint, I'll ensure it reaches the highest level." Maya considered for a long moment, then said softly, "No complaint. Not yet. What I want first is acknowledgement. Right here. Right now." Rachel's throat tightened. She could feel the passengers' eyes on her, burning hotter than any reprimand. The same people who'd smiled approvingly moments ago now avoided her gaze. Leah crossed her arms. "Acknowledgement starts with 2 words. she said. Say them. Rachel's lips pressed together. Her pride, her fear, and her shame collided in silence. Then finally, barely audible, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Maya tilted her head slightly. For what? Rachel hesitated. For misunderstanding your position. That's not what this was, Maya replied gently. Say the truth. Rachel's eyes glistened. For assuming you didn't belong. It was the first honest sentence she'd spoken since the confrontation began. The captain gave a subtle nod, signaling the situation was resolved, but the cabin's atmosphere remained heavy. Even the air felt different, now thicker, charged with something unspoken. Marcus lifted his phone just enough to capture the quiet aftermath, the humbled attendant, the woman who refused to shrink, and the uncomfortable witnesses learning what dignity looked like when tested. Rachel turned away, pretending to busy herself with a service cart, but her hands shook slightly as she rearranged cups that didn't need rearranging. Leah leaned toward Maya, whispering, "You didn't have to make her say it out loud." "I did," Maya murmured, "because silence protects comfort, not justice." Brian cleared his throat, clearly uneasy. "Captain, should we begin pre-flight?" Ward nodded. "Yes. Let's prepare for departure." Rachel opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. She walked toward the galley, shoulders stiff. As she disappeared behind the curtain, a small voice piped up from 2 rows back. A young girl, no more than 8, looked at Maya with wide eyes. "Are you really a doctor?" Maya smiled, warmth flickering through the tension. "I am, sweetheart." The girl grinned. "My mom says I can be anything, even if people don't think so." Maya's eyes softened. "Your mom is very smart." The child's mother gave a faint nod of gratitude. A spark of quiet hope threaded through the uneasy air. Marcus ended his recording, sliding the phone into his jacket. He wasn't sure what headline he'd write yet, but he knew the world would need to hear this story not for outrage, but for understanding. As passengers settled back into their seats, Maya finally sat down in 1A. The leather was cool beneath her palms. She exhaled slowly, her pulse steady again. Leah sat beside her, whispering, "You handled that better than anyone could have." Maya smiled faintly. "Experience," she said. "I've had years of practice." Outside, the sky deepened from gold to gray. The plane began to taxi toward the runway. Rachel reappeared briefly, face pale but controlled. "Dr. Caldwell," she said quietly, "would you like anything before takeoff?" Maya met her gaze. Neither cruel nor forgiving, just human. "No, thank you. I have everything I need." Rachel nodded, retreating toward the galley. The captain's voice echoed through the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." As the plane lifted from the tarmac, Maya gazed out at the fading city lights below. She wondered how many others had been told, in one form or another, that they didn't belong. And she promised herself something. Right then, this would not end in silence. Far behind her. Marcus stared at his phone, already drafting the first lines of his article. He typed slowly, each word deliberate. Justice doesn't begin in courtrooms or boardrooms. Sometimes it begins in seat 1A. As the aircraft climbed into the clouds, the cabin lights dimmed, leaving a soft glow that brushed across faces still shadowed by unease. It wasn't peace that filled the air. It was reflection. Dr. Maya Caldwell sat quietly in 1A, her hands resting on her lap. The world outside the oval window was a swirl of white mist and fading light. Inside her, however, the storm had only just begun. Leah leaned closer, voice hushed. The video's already spreading, she said, showing her phone discreetly. Someone posted it from a passenger 2 rows back. Thousands of views in minutes. Maya's expression didn't change, but her pulse quickened. "Let it spread," she murmured. "The world needs to see what dignity looks like when it's questioned." Behind them, Marcus Dale was typing furiously into his notes app, piecing together fragments of what he'd witnessed. His instincts told him this wasn't a one-day headline. It was something bigger, a story about silence, systems, and the quiet power of grace. Rachel Monroe moved stiffly through the aisle, offering water with trembling hands. Her voice, usually bright and commanding, now barely rose above a whisper. Every sir and ma'am carried the weight of watching eyes. When she reached Maya's row, she hesitated. "Would you like something to drink?" Maya looked up, her tone neutral. "No, thank you." Rachel nodded quickly, retreating toward the galley. Leah watched her go, a flicker of pity in her eyes. "She looks shaken." "She should be," Maya said softly. "But maybe that's what it takes for people to see themselves clearly." A few rows back, Charles Denton shifted uncomfortably, his arrogance fading into self-consciousness. He stared down at his untouched glass of champagne, hearing his own words replay in his head. "You people love to play the victim." He wished he could take them back. "Excuse me," a gentle voice said from across the aisle. It was a woman in a gray blazer, Carmen Lewis, a corporate consultant returning from a leadership summit. "Dr. Caldwell," she said carefully. "I saw everything. You handled it with grace most people couldn't manage." Maya nodded in appreciation. "Thank you. But grace doesn't mean silence. It means strength without cruelty." Carmen smiled faintly. "Then I hope your strength reaches the right ears. They'll have no choice but to listen now." The hum of the engines filled the pauses between words. Outside, night had fallen completely. The cabin lights cast long shadows across the aisle, each one holding its own version of guilt or awakening. Brian Foster approached quietly. Tablet in hand, "Dr. Caldwell," he said in a low voice, "I need to tell you something." Maya turned to him. "Go on." His throat bobbed. "This isn't the first time something like this happened. Rachel's had complaints before racial profiling, arguments with passengers, but they never went anywhere. Corporate always marked them as resolved." Leah frowned. "Resolved or buried?" "Buried." Brian admitted. "We were told to follow protocol, not question it." Maya studied him. "And now you're questioning it." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Because watching it happen to you, it made me realize how wrong it is. I should have spoken up sooner." She gave a small, approving nod. It's never too late to do the right thing. But once you see truth, you can't unsee it. The real test is what you do next. Brian's shoulders straightened slightly. "Then I'll testify if it comes to that." Leah's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening. "Corporate just sent an internal memo," she whispered. "They're aware of the incident, trying to contain it before it hits the press." Maya's lips curved faintly. Too late. The truth's already airborne. Across the aisle, Marcus was whispering into his recorder. "Flight 237. A confrontation at 30,000 feet. What began as suspicion is now unraveling into something much larger, a company forced to face itself." Rachel stood near the galley, pretending to check supplies, but her hands trembled as she listened to every word. Fear curled tight in her stomach. She wasn't a bad person, she told herself. She was just following rules, following training, following something. But deep down, a voice whispered, "You are following bias." She looked up suddenly, catching Maya's reflection in the mirrored panel above the beverage counter. The calmness in that woman's posture was unbearable. It wasn't triumph. It was truth. Captain Ethan Ward's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached cruising altitude. You're free to move about the cabin. The announcement felt hollow. No one moved. No one wanted to miss what was unfolding. Then, as if on cue, Leah's screen lit up again. She turned to Maya. It's from Tyler Jenkins, the former compliance officer you met last year. He says he has evidence. Maya's brow furrowed. What kind of evidence? Internal memos, Leah said quietly. Documents showing Skylink suppressed multiple bias complaints. Apparently, some executives buried them to protect their performance metrics. Rachel froze in place. The color drained from her face. Maya took a slow breath. So this isn't just an isolated act of prejudice. It's a pattern, a system built on denial. Leah nodded grimly. He's sending everything to your encrypted email. Marcus, sensing the magnitude of the moment, leaned forward slightly. You're saying there's proof that they've been covering it up? There's always proof, Maya said. It just takes courage to uncover it. Brian, still nearby, glanced nervously toward Rachel. Is that true? He asked her. Did you know? Rachel shook her head quickly, voice shaking. No, I didn't know. I swear. I thought the complaints were exaggerated. Maya turned in her seat, and yet you became one of them. The words struck hard. Rachel's lips trembled. I'm not racist, she whispered. Maya's tone softened, but stayed steady. Racism isn't always hatred. Sometimes it's blindness and comfort, and the refusal to see pain you don't share. Rachel said nothing. The silence stretched until even the engine seemed quieter. Then, Captain Ward stepped out from the cockpit again, his expression solemn. Dr. Caldwell, he said, corporate has requested a direct line with you. They'd like to speak privately. Put it on speaker, Maya said calmly. If they want a conversation, they can have it with the witnesses who watched this unfold. The captain hesitated, then connected the call. A voice crackled through the speaker, polished, nervous. Dr. Caldwell, this is Richard Hale, Chief Operations Officer for Skylinks Airways. We've been made aware of an incident involving our staff. Please accept our sincerest apologies. Maya's voice was quiet but cutting. You mean the incident where your company's system failed and your people chose prejudice over professionalism? Let's not jump to conclusions, Hale replied quickly. We take these matters very seriously. Marcus raised an eyebrow, muttering under his breath. That's what they always say before doing nothing. Maya leaned closer to the speaker. Mr. Hale, I have confirmation that your internal team has suppressed at least 6 prior bias complaints in the past quarter. Do you deny that silence? A faint exhale? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Maya's eyes hardened. Then I suggest you check your email. You'll find copies of the files your compliance officer just leaked to me. Gas rippled through the cabin. Rachel's knees almost gave way. Hale's voice cracked slightly. Dr. Caldwell, please we can discuss this after you land. No, Maya said firmly. We'll discuss it now, because this started in the sky, and it ends in the light. Leah leaned back, whispering, You're really doing this, aren't you? Maya's gaze never wavered. Justice doesn't wait for landing clearance. The line went dead. Silence engulfed the cabin once more. Marcus finally spoke, almost reverently. This flight just became history. Maya looked out at the endless horizon beyond the window. No, she said softly. It just became truth. The plane flew steady through the night sky, a silver arrow cutting across the dark. But inside, the air was heavy thick with tension, guilt, and the faint hum of whispered realization. Dr. Maya Caldwell sat still in 1A, her eyes fixed on the window, though her mind wasn't there. The call with corporate had ended, but its echo lingered in every corner of the cabin. What had begun as humiliation had now evolved into something far larger, an exposure of an entire system built to protect itself. Leah James adjusted her headset, eyes darting toward Maya. "They'll try to spin it," she said quietly. "Damage control." "You know how they operate." Maya nodded. "Of course. They'll call it a misunderstanding, issue a half-hearted apology, and move on. That's what policy does. It shields people from accountability, from across the aisle." Marcus Dale stopped typing. "You're saying they'll protect her?" "Not just her," Maya replied, voice calm but firm. "They'll protect the image of fairness. That's what corporations sell: optics, not integrity." Marcus leaned back, considering her words. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" Maya gave a faint, bitter smile. "More times than I can count. In boardrooms, in hospitals, on sidewalks. Meanwhile, at the galley." Rachel Monroe stood motionless. Her hands rested on the counter, knuckles white. The conversation from earlier echoed in her mind. Racism isn't always hatred. Sometimes it's blindness. It kept replaying, like static she couldn't turn off. She looked over her shoulder. Maya sat calm, regal even, as if untouched by what had just happened. That composure stung more than anger could have. It forced Rachel to confront something she'd buried for years. She wasn't as fair as she believed. Brian approached cautiously, tablet in hand. "Rachel," he said softly, "Captain wants the updated manifest before landing." She didn't answer. Her eyes glistened, unfocused. "Did you know she was that powerful?" Brian hesitated. "Does it matter?" Rachel exhaled shakily. "It shouldn't, but it does, doesn't it?" Before Brian could respond, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, please report to the cockpit." Rachel straightened, wiping her face quickly. "Stay here," she told Brian, forcing authority back into her voice. But when she walked toward the cockpit, her steps were slower, heavier, each one dragging a weight she could no longer ignore. Inside, Captain Ethan Ward was waiting, his expression serious. "Close the door, Rachel." She obeyed, her pulse quickening. "Sir." He held up a hand. "I've just spoken with headquarters. They're monitoring everything that's happened here. Dr. Caldwell's team sent them the internal files. The press is already sniffing around." Rachel's stomach dropped. "Are they firing me?" "Not yet," he said. "But they've asked for an immediate incident report, and, Rachel," he paused, "they want me to inform you that your conduct will be reviewed under Section 9.3, behavior unbecoming of flight leadership." Her throat tightened. "Sir, I didn't mean." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "Intent doesn't erase impact. You should have verified her identity before assuming anything." Tears threatened to rise, but she blinked them back. "I was just doing my job." "That's exactly the problem," he said. "Everyone keeps hiding behind that sentence. Just doing my job. You think policy absolves conscience? But policy without empathy is just prejudice in uniform." Rachel froze. Those were Maya's exact words. Hearing them from him made them cut even deeper. The captain's tone softened slightly. "You've been a good attendant for 15 years. Don't let this define you, but don't pretend it never happened either." He dismissed her gently, and she stepped out of the cockpit, her chest tight, her mind a storm. Back in the cabin, Leah noticed her return and whispered to Maya, "She looks like she's about to fall apart." Maya didn't look back. Let her feel it. Pain teaches what comfort never can. The flight continued in near silence. The passengers, once restless, now sat quietly, some pretending to read, others simply staring into the void. They'd all witnessed something unforgettable. Marcus finally spoke again, leaning slightly toward Maya. "You know, I've covered politics, crime, disasters, but I've never seen a single act of quiet defiance command so much attention. You didn't yell, you didn't threaten, and yet you completely changed the air in this plane." Maya smiled faintly. "Power doesn't need volume. It needs clarity." Leah chuckled softly. "That's going in his article." "Already did," Marcus said, smirking as he typed. Rachel reappeared near the front, checking seatbelts like a robot. Her voice trembled slightly with each word tray tables up. "Seat back straight." It was routine, but the routine had lost its safety. As she reached Maya's row, she hesitated again. "We'll be landing soon," she murmured. Maya nodded. "Thank you." There was a pause, a long, trembling moment. Then Rachel whispered, "I'm sorry, truly." Maya looked at her, eyes soft but unwavering. "Apologies matter," she said, "but change matters more." Rachel's lips parted, but no words came. She nodded once and walked away. Moments later, Leah's tablet buzzed again. She glanced down and gasped. "Maya," she said, "it's trending. Millions of views. Hashtags everywhere. Psych. See Majum Skylink's scandal." Marcus's phone buzzed too. "My feed's exploding. People are calling it the flight that changed the skies." Maya leaned back, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about me. It's about reflection. People are seeing what happens when silence is finally interrupted." Captain Ward's voice returned over the speakers. "We've begun our descent into Boston. Please fasten your seatbelts." As the plane tilted downward, city lights flickered below like a sea of stars. Leah stared out the window. "You think they'll actually change?" Maya's tone was gentle, contemplative. Systems rarely change overnight, but sometimes all it takes is one visible crack to let the light in. Rachel sat at the jump seat, staring at the floor. For the first time in years, she didn't feel certain of who she was. The uniform that once made her proud now felt heavy, like borrowed armor that no longer fit. When the wheels touched down, a collective exhale swept through the cabin. The moment had ended, but its echo remained as the passengers began to disembark. Many paused to glance at Maya. Some nodded respectfully. Others simply smiled in quiet solidarity. Marcus lingered by her seat. "You just gave me my next cover story," he said. "Make it about more than me," Maya replied. "Make it about every person who's ever been told they didn't belong. Because this," she gestured around the cabin, "isn't just a flight. It's a mirror." Marcus smiled, a mix of awe and gratitude. "You have my word." When the cabin finally emptied, Rachel approached one last time. Her voice barely carried above the hum of the cooling engines. "Dr. Caldwell, I don't expect forgiveness, but I'll remember this." Maya gave her a slow, measured nod. "Then maybe that's where redemption begins." Rachel's eyes shimmered with tears she no longer tried to hide. "Thank you," she whispered before walking away. As Maya stood, gathering her bag, Leah whispered, "You handled that with so much grace." Maya smiled faintly. "Grace isn't softness. It's strength wrapped in understanding." They stepped off the plane together, greeted by the cool Boston air. The cameras waiting at the gate flashed instantly. Reporters called her name, microphones outstretched. But Maya didn't speak yet. Not tonight. She simply looked straight into one of the cameras, calm and steady, and said quietly, "The real flight starts now." The glass doors of Boston Logan Airport slid open, releasing a wave of camera flashes and hurried questions. Reporters pressed forward, voices overlapping like crashing surf. "Dr. Caldwell, is it true you were denied your seat because of racial bias? How do you respond to Skylink's apology statement? Will you take legal action? Dr." Maya Caldwell didn't stop walking. Her steps were steady, her face unreadable. Leah James stayed close beside her, holding back the crowd with quiet firmness. "Keep walking," Maya said softly. "We'll answer when we're ready, not when they demand it." They reached the car waiting outside. The driver opened the door. Inside, the noise of the terminal faded into silence. The city lights reflected off the windshield like restless thoughts. Leah checked her phone again. "Skylink's just released a statement," she said. "They're calling it a regrettable misunderstanding. No mention of your name." Maya exhaled slowly. "Of course. They'll apologize to the air before they ever apologize to a person." Marcus Dale, who had followed discreetly through the crowd, texted her a single line. "The world's already picked a side. The video's at 12 million views." She stared at the message for a moment before replying, "Let's make sure it means something." Leah looked over. "You could sue them." "Maya, you'd win easily." "I don't want a courtroom victory," she said. "I want a cultural one." Her words hung in the quiet, like a vow. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls of Medavant Systems headquarters. The building was sleek and bright, the kind of place that hummed with progress. But inside Maya's office, the air felt different, weighted with purpose. Her leadership team sat around the long table. Screens flickered with news segments replaying the video Rachel's confrontation, Maya's quiet strength, the captain's stunned recognition. "Public sentiment's on your side," said Eli Tran, Metavance's communications director. "But we have to act fast. People want to know what you stand for beyond this moment." Maya nodded slowly. "Then let's give them something to believe in." Leah glanced at her notes. "I've been thinking about what you said about systems protecting themselves. What if we built something to change that?" Maya looked intrigued. "Go on." Leah leaned forward. "A platform that documents bias, reports from airline staff and passengers anonymous, encrypted, but visible to the public. A system no one can bury." Eli whistled softly. "You're talking about total transparency." "Exactly," Leah said. "If they won't police themselves, we'll build the mirror they can't hide from." Maya smiled faintly. "You've been learning." Leah grinned. "From the best." The room filled with a new kind of energy. Hopeful, focused. Maya stood, walking toward the window. The city stretched out below Boston morning traffic, glinting like silver veins. "We'll call it the Horizon Project," she said, "because justice shouldn't be grounded. It should fly." By midday, Skylinks was in chaos. Inside the company's glass headquarters, executives argued behind closed doors. The CEO, Laura Bennett, slammed a printed report on the table. "How did this happen?" she demanded. "One flight attendant, one passenger, and now our stock's down 8% overnight." The compliance director shifted nervously. "It's not just one video anymore. Caldwell's people leaked the internal complaint logs. The press has copies. Bennett's jaw tightened. Who's responsible for burying them? Technically, legal signed off on it. Then legal can explain themselves to the board. She snapped. Her assistant entered the room quietly. Ma'am, Doctor, Caldwell is requesting a live statement from Skylink's leadership. She's holding a press conference in 2 hours. The CEO froze. A press conference. Yes, ma'am. She says she'll be addressing corporate accountability and offering solutions. Bennett's eyes darkened. Solutions, or a spectacle. 2 hours later, the world tuned in. Maya stood behind a simple podium at Medivance headquarters. The logo of the Horizon Project glowed faintly behind her on a blue screen. Cameras flashed, microphones blinked, and thousands watched the live stream online. Her tone was calm, deliberate, each word measured like a note in a symphony. Yesterday, I experienced what millions of people face quietly every day, being judged before being understood. I was denied a seat, but not for lack of payment, for lack of perceived belonging. The crowd hushed. But this isn't about one person or one airline. She continued, it's about the reflex that teaches us to doubt others based on difference, and the systems that protect that reflex instead of challenging it. She paused, letting the words sink in. That's why today, we're launching the Horizon Project, an open access network that allows travelers, employees, and companies to report and track bias incidents transparently, no filters, no buried files, no silence. Leah handed her a tablet. On the screen, the site went live. Within minutes, reports began appearing. Passengers from different airlines sharing stories that had long been hidden. Maya looked up from the screen. The truth doesn't need anger. It needs visibility. The audience erupted in applause. Watching from her office, Laura Bennett felt the air leave her lungs. She turned to her advisor. We can't let her control the narrative. But her advisor shook his head. She already does. That evening, Rachel Monroe sat in her small apartment, staring at the television. Maya's speech replayed on every channel. Rachel's uniform hung neatly on the back of her chair, the same one that once made her proud. Her son, Evan, about 8 years old, looked up from his homework. Mom, that's the lady from your plane. Rachel's throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart. She seems nice, he said. Did you talk to her? Rachel swallowed hard. Yes, I did. Evan tilted his head. Did she help you? Rachel blinked fast, her vision blurring. She helped me see something I should have seen a long time ago. Evan didn't understand, but he nodded, content. When he went to bed, Rachel sat alone for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and began typing an email. Subject public apology to Pressa Medivance. Dr. Caldwell. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement. I was wrong, not just in my actions, but in what I failed to question inside myself. I want to be better. Please let me contribute to the Horizon Project in any way you see fit. Rachel Monroe. She hesitated before hitting send, then whispered to the quiet room, It's time to start fixing what I broke. Wantum. Later that night, Leah found Maya still in her office, gazing out at the city lights. You've done it, she said. People are calling this the beginning of a new era. Maya smiled faintly. A new era doesn't start with applause. Leah, it starts when people look inward and admit what they've ignored. Leah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think Rachel will ever understand that Maya turned from the window? She already does. The question is whether she'll act on it. Her phone buzzed. An email notification appeared on the screen, Rachel's name glowing softly in the subject line. Maya read the message in silence. Then she whispered, "Maybe redemption isn't found in apology. Maybe it begins with courage." Leah smiled gently. "So what will you do?" Maya looked up, her eyes steady. "I'll answer her." Rain streaked down the glass walls of Medivant's headquarters the next morning. The city was still buzzing with Maya Caldwell's speech from the day before. News anchors replayed her words in every broadcast. "The truth doesn't need anger. It needs visibility." Leah James entered Maya's office with 2 steaming cups of coffee and an unreadable expression. "The world's awake, and Skylinks is shaking," she said. "They've scheduled a live press response in 30 minutes. Laura Bennett herself will be speaking." Maya looked up from her desk, calm but focused. "Good. Let's see what kind of truth they decide to tell." Leah set down the coffee. "Do you think they'll admit fault?" "Not yet," Maya replied. "Power doesn't surrender, it recalculates. But we'll give them a reason to choose differently." Her phone buzzed. The caller ID read Laura Bennett, Skylinks Airways. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Speak of the devil!" She accepted the call, pressing speaker so Leah could hear. "Dr. Caldwell," came Laura's crisp voice. "I'm calling to propose a private conversation before our statement goes public." "I don't do private anymore," Maya said evenly. "Transparency built this movement. It'll stay that way." Laura sighed. The sound weary. "Maya, this is bigger than either of us. I can't undo what happened, but I can offer partnership, real structural change. Let's turn this into something productive before it turns into a war." Maya leaned back in her chair. "Are you offering collaboration or containment?" "A commitment," Laura said after a pause, "to review our internal culture with Medivance's ethics division. To start with the truth, not PR." Leah's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's bold," she whispered. Maya crossed one leg over the other. "Considering, if you mean that," she said into the phone, "then you'll announce it live. Not as a gesture of damage control, but as acknowledgement that growth begins with accountability." Laura hesitated. "You'll stand with me when I do. I'll stand for justice," Maya replied, "wherever that leads." The line went quiet for several seconds. Then Laura said softly, "Then watch the broadcast." An hour later, the world tuned in again. The Skylinks logo gleamed on a backdrop behind Laura Bennett as she faced the cameras. She began with the usual corporate cadence. "We at Skylinks Airways believe in equality, respect, and integrity." But halfway through her prepared speech, something shifted in her tone. Her hands trembled slightly on the podium. "What happened aboard Flight 237 was unacceptable," she said finally. "Not because it became public, but because it should never have happened at all. Dr. Caldwell didn't ask for this spotlight, but she used it to show us our reflection, and for that, I thank her." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the press room. Laura continued, "Effective immediately. Skylinks will partner with Medivant Systems to establish the Horizon Initiative, an independent review and education program addressing unconscious bias across all levels of our company. And I, personally, take full responsibility for ensuring this change isn't symbolic. It's structural, at Medivant's headquarters." The room erupted in surprise. Leah's mouth fell open. She actually did it. Maya didn't react immediately. She just watched the screen, studying Laura's expression, the tremor in her jaw, the sincerity behind the controlled professionalism. "She means it," Maya said quietly. "At least right now. she does. Across town, in her modest apartment, Rachel Monroe watched the same broadcast with trembling hands. Her uniform lay folded beside her, the name tag glinting under the dull light. When Laura Bennett spoke her name, Rachel felt a knot tighten in her chest. She turned off the TV, unable to watch. Then her laptop pinged a new email. The sender, Dr. Maya Caldwell. Her heart raced as she opened it. Subject response to your letter. Rachel, I read your message. You showed humility where pride could have lived, and that matters more than you think. The Horizon Project needs people who understand both sides of the aisle, those who've made mistakes and chosen growth. If you're sincere about rebuilding, I'd like to invite you to join our pilot program as a field consultant. Your experience, if used honestly, can help others see what you once didn't. Growth begins where shame ends. Maya tears filled Rachel's eyes before she reached the end. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Overcome, her son Evan entered, sleepy-eyed. Mom, you okay? Rachel smiled weakly. Yeah, honey. I think I just got a second chance. That afternoon, Maya sat with Leah and Marcus Dale in her office. Marcus had been quiet, lost in his notes. Finally, he said, "Do you realize what you've done? You turned humiliation into reform. You didn't destroy the system, you invited it to rebuild itself." Maya smiled faintly. Anger exposes problems. Accountability fixes them. But forgiveness, that's what sustains change. Leah's phone vibrated again. You might want to see this, she said, showing Maya the screen. It was Rachel's live post. I was the attendant on Flight 237. I failed to see a woman's humanity before her credentials. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for reflection, mine and yours. Underneath, the comments section filled with thousands of responses, messages of anger, understanding, empathy, and debate. Maya's gaze lingered on the screen. She's brave, she murmured. Marcus leaned forward. So, what's next? Implementation, Maya said. Skylink starts retraining next week, and we'll be there to oversee it. Leah grinned. You're really going back? Of course, Maya said. Healing doesn't happen from a distance. You have to return to the scene, not as a victim, but as a guide. 1 week later, Maya walked into the Skylink's training center. Rows of uniformed attendants sat quietly as she entered. At the front stood Rachel, her posture straight, her face calm but nervous. When Maya approached, Rachel whispered, I didn't think you'd actually come. Maya smiled softly. I don't believe in unfinished stories. Together, they addressed the room. Maya spoke of responsibility, empathy, and the courage to question comfort. Rachel followed, sharing her personal reckoning with disarming honesty. I used to think fairness meant treating everyone the same, Rachel said. Now I understand fairness means seeing what's unseen and correcting it. The room was silent. Then, slowly, one attendant began to clap. Others followed. It wasn't loud or showy, it was real. Afterward, as they stood in the hallway, Rachel turned to Maya. You could have ruined me. Instead, you gave me a job. Maya shook her head. I didn't give you anything. You earned your way back by facing yourself. Rachel's eyes shimmered. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that grace. Maya smiled, extending a hand. Then let's make sure no one else needs to learn it the hard way. They shook hands, two women once separated by prejudice, now bound by purpose. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the building in light. Leah watched from the parking lot. capturing the moment on her phone. She turned to Marcus, who stood beside her with a faint smile. "Think the world's ready for this story?" Marcus nodded. "The world doesn't need to be ready, it just needs to listen." Back inside, Maya looked around the bright training room and whispered to herself, "Justice isn't revenge, it's repair." And somewhere in that stillness, she knew the flight that had started in humiliation was now landing in hope. A week after the first training session, the headquarters of Skylinks buzzed with a strange mix of tension and optimism. Posters promoting the Horizon Initiative lined the walls. See, listen, reform. For the first time, the airline's sterile hallways seemed to hum with humanity instead of corporate routine. Dr. Maya Caldwell walked through the lobby beside Leah James and Marcus Dale. Employees turned to look, whispering softly. Some smiled, others avoided eye contact, unsure what to feel. Leah leaned closer and murmured, "You've become a living headline. Maya, half of them admire you. The other half fears you." "I don't want either," Maya said. "I just want them to start seeing." They entered the conference room where cameras were being set up. Skylinks had agreed to broadcast their internal audit findings live first in the airline industry. Transparency wasn't a slogan anymore. It was about to become reality. Laura Bennett stood at the front, reviewing her notes. When she saw Maya, she approached with genuine warmth. "I wasn't sure you'd come today." "You invited accountability," Maya replied. "It would be wrong not to witness it." Laura nodded, her voice low. "You were right. You know, policy had become our shield. But after reading the reports," she shook her head, "the truth was worse than we imagined." Marcus adjusted his camera lens, capturing the moment. "That's why you're airing this." "Right." To face it publicly, Laura took a steady breath. "Exactly. No more hiding behind phrases like isolated incident. We're putting the numbers out there, training records, complaint histories, and every buried report from the last 5 years." Maya smiled faintly. "Courage looks good on you." At 10 sharp, the broadcast began. Employees across the company tuned in from every branch, pilots in break rooms, attendants in lounges, ground crew huddled around tablets. Laura began the presentation, her tone deliberate. For years, Skylinks has prided itself on being a symbol of innovation and inclusivity. But our internal review revealed that beneath that image, bias thrived in silence. The data appeared on screen charts, graphs, cold statistics that now burned with moral weight. Over 230 verified complaints of discrimination had been resolved without investigation. 64 cases marked as inconclusive despite clear evidence. A dozen staff members quietly transferred instead of disciplined. The room fell into stunned quiet. Leah's voice was a whisper. They really did bury it all. Marcus kept his camera steady, recording everything. "You can almost feel the air change," he murmured. Laura's voice grew steadier as she continued. "Dr. Caldwell's confrontation forced us to face what we ignored. It wasn't comfortable, but growth never is. Today, we begin by admitting the truth out loud." Then she turned to Maya. "Dr. Caldwell, would you like to speak?" Maya stood, her presence commanding without trying to be. The microphone picked up the calm rhythm of her breath before she began. "When I boarded that plane, I wanted nothing more than to get home," she said softly. "But home isn't always a place. It's the feeling of belonging. And for too many people, that feeling is denied before they even sit down." She paused, meeting the eyes of the employees around her. "I don't stand here to accuse. I stand here to remind you that systems don't fail because of villains. They fail Because of silence. Because good people convince themselves that comfort is the same as peace. Her words carried through the room like wind through glass, gentle but unyielding. She gestured toward the screen behind her. These numbers aren't statistics. They're stories. Each one represents a voice unheard, a talent dismissed, a life diminished. And if we want to change that, we start by listening without defense. Laura swallowed hard, her eyes bright with emotion. From the back of the room, Rachel Monroe stood quietly in her new consultant's uniform. Her palms were damp, but her heart beat steady. When Maya invited her to the podium, she hesitated. "Me, yes," Maya said gently. "They need to hear the story from both sides." Rachel took a slow step forward. Her voice trembled at first. "I used to think fairness meant treating everyone by the book," she said. "But rules without empathy just hide our fears." I followed protocol that day, and it still led me to prejudice, because the book can't teach humanity. The room listened intently. Rachel continued, finding her strength. "I'm not proud of who I was that morning on Flight 237, but I'm grateful for what came after, because it taught me that redemption isn't given, it's earned." Leah smiled softly. "She's speaking from the heart now." Rachel looked at Maya, who gave her a quiet nod of approval. "I want to dedicate my new role to training others not to repeat my mistakes," Rachel said, voice steady now, "and to remind everyone that sometimes the most powerful apology isn't a word, it's a change in behavior." When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was something deeper, more human, like exhaling after years of holding breath. Laura wiped at her eyes discreetly before addressing the audience. "Dr. Caldwell and Ms. Monroe have agreed to help guide our company through a year-long reform program. Together, we will rebuild this culture from the ground up," Maya added. "And we won't stop there. We're inviting other airlines to join the Horizon Initiative. Justice shouldn't travel alone." The cameras captured the moment as both women shook hands, once adversaries, now allies. After the broadcast ended, the room slowly emptied. Marcus lingered, gathering his notes. "You just turned a scandal into a movement," he said to Maya. "I didn't do it alone," she replied. "Change never happens alone." Rachel approached, shy but smiling. "You think people will really believe this can work?" Maya placed a hand on her shoulder. "They'll believe when they see it. That's where we come in." Leah joined them, scrolling through her tablet. "The Horizon site just crashed," she said. "Too many people signing up to volunteer. Engineers are patching it now." Maya laughed softly. "A good problem to have." As they walked toward the exit, Marcus caught up beside them. "When I write this, I'm not going to call it a redemption story," he said. "What will you call it?" Then Maya asked. He smiled. "A reckoning with grace." That night, Maya returned home to her quiet apartment. The city below glittered, alive with noise and stories. She stood by the window, reflecting on the whirlwind of the past weeks. Leah's voice echoed in her memory. "You turned humiliation into healing." But Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a bridge once stretched thin, connecting worlds that had forgotten how to meet halfway. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Dr. Caldwell, thank you for believing I could change. Tomorrow's our first training session in Denver. I'll make you proud." Maya typed back simply, "You already have." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly over Boston Harbor. But for once, Maya didn't mind the storm, because this time she wasn't standing in the rain. She was helping others find their way through it. She turned off the lights, the city glow still filtering through the window, and whispered to herself, "Justice isn't a moment. It's a movement." And in that quiet truth, she finally felt peace. 3 months later, the world had changed faster than anyone expected. Skylinx's Horizon initiative had expanded across the airline industry, inspiring other companies to examine their own internal systems. The name Maya Caldwell had become synonymous with reform admired by some, resented by others. But change, Maya knew, never arrived without resistance. That morning, she sat in her Boston office, staring at a report on her desk. Employee backlash. The headline read, "The document was filled with anonymous complaints from longtime staff who resented the new transparency policies." Leah entered quietly, holding her tablet. "You've seen it?" "Yes," Maya replied. "It's louder than I expected." "People don't like mirrors," Leah said gently, "especially when the reflection isn't flattering." Maya rubbed her temples. "I didn't want to start a war inside these walls. I wanted dialogue, understanding." Leah hesitated, then said, "You can't reform culture without shaking it first. You always told me that." Maya gave a faint smile. "Remind me not to take my own advice next time." Before Leah could respond, the phone rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number, but Maya answered anyway. "Dr. Caldwell," a voice said, hesitant but familiar. It was Captain Ethan Ward. "Captain," she greeted, surprised. "It's been a while." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I just wanted you to know I resigned today. After 25 years. Maya frowned. "Why?" "Because I was tired of pretending the old ways still worked," he replied quietly. "I'm joining Horizon's training program as a mentor. I figured it's time I learned, too." Maya sat back, deeply moved. "That's unexpected." He chuckled softly. "So was Flight 237, ma'am. But it changed me. You changed me." After they hung up, Maya looked out at the skyline. "Sometimes storms leave the sky cleaner than before," she murmured. Leah smiled. "And sometimes they plant the seeds for something bigger." Boom. Later that afternoon, Maya and Leah flew to Washington, D.C., for the first National Aviation Ethics Conference. Dozens of executives, pilots, and policymakers had gathered to discuss the Horizon Initiative and its broader impact. As they stepped onto the stage, Maya felt the weight of expectation. Cameras flashed. Every move mattered now. Laura Bennett opened the session with a brief introduction. "When Dr. Caldwell challenged our system, she didn't just hold us accountable, she gave us a path forward. Today, we take that journey together." The room erupted in applause as Maya approached the podium. "6 months ago," she began, "a misunderstanding at 30,000 feet forced us to confront truths we'd ignored for decades. We learned that equality isn't a policy, it's a practice, one that requires humility and persistence." She paused, scanning the audience. "But reform is never neat. It's uncomfortable, messy, and often misunderstood. People ask why we push so hard. The answer is simple, because comfort has never changed the world." Her words drew a quiet murmur of agreement. From the audience, Rachel Monroe watched intently. Her son Evan sat beside her, swinging his legs quietly. When Maya caught Rachel's eye, she smiled softly. Rachel's new Skylynx badge gleamed under the lights, one that now read, "Ethics Liaison, Horizon Division." When the session ended, reporters swarmed the stage. Leah managed to usher Maya through the crowd and into a quieter hallway. But before they could reach the elevator, a voice called out, "Dr. Caldwell, can I have a word?" It was Marcus Dale, camera in hand. His tone was serious. Maya stopped. "What's wrong?" He handed her a file, an anonymous tip. Someone inside Skylinks leaked internal memos suggesting that a group of executives are planning to roll back Horizon policies once the media attention fades. Leah's face tightened. "They're trying to undo everything quietly," Marcus said. "They're arguing the reforms hurt efficiency and morale. They think you've gone too far." Maya's eyes darkened with calm fire. "Too far is the language of the comfortable." Marcus nodded grimly. "What do you want to do with this?" "Expose it," she said, "but with evidence, not outrage." That evening, in her hotel room, Maya spread the documents across the table. Leah worked beside her, typing fast, cross-referencing emails and meeting notes. "This isn't just hesitation," Leah said. "It's sabotage. They're deliberately misreporting bias cases to make the new system look like a failure." Maya's voice was quiet but steady. "Fear always fights hardest before it dies." Rachel called during the chaos, her voice trembling. "Maya, I think you should know one of the supervisors at the Denver base mentioned shredding compliance files. They said the reforms were temporary optics." Maya took a slow breath. "Thank you. Rachel, keep everything documented. We'll handle this the right way." When the call ended, Leah looked at her boss. "They'll come after you if you push this." "They already did," Maya said, "and we're still standing." The next morning, Marcus's article broke online. The headline read, "Inside Resistance Skylinks, Executives Move to Undermine Horizon Reforms." The piece spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. Supporters rallied under "Sour Keep the Horizon Alive." While critics claimed it was a corporate witch hunt, Maya faced the storm head-on. She released a statement within hours. The Horizon Initiative was never about headlines. It was about humanity. Anyone who chooses to erase progress will have to explain why justice is inconvenient. Her words hit the industry like a bolt of lightning. By evening, several airlines pledged public support for Horizon. The FAA announced an investigation into Skylinks' compliance practices. Laura Bennett called Maya personally. "You lit another fire," she said, half admiring, half exasperated. "I didn't light it," Maya replied. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't burning." Laura sighed. "They want me to distance the company from you. And what will you do?" "I'll do what's right," Laura said quietly, "even if it costs me." That night, Maya returned to her hotel balcony, the Washington skyline glowing below. Leah joined her with 2 mugs of tea. "You should sleep," Leah said softly. "Can't," Maya replied. "Too much to think about." Leah hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever regret it?" "Speaking up that day on the plane?" Maya smiled faintly. "Every once in a while. It would have been easier to stay quiet. But then I remember my father, how he once told me, silence doesn't keep you safe. It just makes injustice louder." Leah's voice softened. "He'd be proud." Maya looked toward the horizon, the real one this time, painted in shades of orange and gold. Maybe, but pride isn't the goal. Progress is. For a moment, they stood in silence, listening to the city hum below. Then Maya said, almost to herself, "Every system resists until it can't anymore. We're almost there. Leah, I can feel it, and somewhere deep inside, she believed it not as hope, but as certainty." The sun began to rise, washing the sky in light. The storm had passed for now, but Maya knew another would come. Change always invited new battles. Still, as she sipped her tea and watched the dawn break over the Capitol, one thought steadied her heart. Justice wasn't fragile. It just needed people brave enough to carry it through the turbulence. The following weeks were a blur of headlines, interviews, and boardroom battles. The exposé Marcus published had shaken the industry to its core. For the first time, airline executives were being asked questions they could no longer sidestep. In the middle of that storm stood Dr. Maya Caldwell, composed, precise, unflinching. Yet beneath that calm exterior, she felt the toll. The late nights, the scrutiny, the constant push to defend what should have been self-evident dignity. That morning, as sunlight poured into her office, Maya sat in silence, staring at the framed quote above her desk. It read, "Progress demands persistence. Even when applause fades." Leah entered quietly, carrying a stack of folders. "These came from the FAA task force," she said. "They want your input on expanding Horizon to other transportation sectors." Maya rubbed her temples. "We're barely keeping up with aviation." Leah smiled gently. "You're the one who said change doesn't wait for permission." Maya chuckled softly. "Did I really?" "You did. Repeatedly." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Laura Bennett flashed across the screen. "Urgent. Skylink's board vote today. Possible reversal of reforms. Call me." Maya's jaw tightened. "They're actually doing it." Leah frowned. But after everything, the broadcast, the apology, the partnership, why would they go back now? "Because power hates accountability," Maya said quietly. "And the moment attention fades, old habits return." Across the city, Laura Bennett stood at the head of a long mahogany table, facing a boardroom full of skeptical faces. Some wore polite smiles, others radiated resentment. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we can't move forward by erasing what we built. Horizon has made us more transparent, more trusted." One director, a gray-haired man named Howard Pierce, leaned back in his chair. "Trusted. Our investors are nervous. Profits dropped 8% last quarter. Training costs have tripled. We're losing control of our narrative." Laura's eyes narrowed. "We're not losing control, we're gaining integrity." Another board member chimed in. "Integrity doesn't pay the bills. We're a business, not a social movement." Before Laura could respond, the room fell into silence as the door opened. Dr. Maya Caldwell stepped inside, escorted by Leah. Every head turned. "I believe this meeting concerns a project I helped build," Maya said, her tone calm but sharp. "So I came to listen, and to remind you what's at stake." Howard sneered. "With respect, Dr. Caldwell, this is a Skylink's internal matter." "Respect," Maya repeated, walking toward the table. "I know that word well. It's often used right before someone tries to silence accountability." Leah set down a folder in front of each board member. Inside were letters from passengers, attendants, and pilots who'd benefited from Horizon. Stories of reconciliation, second chances, and lives changed. "These aren't statistics," Maya said softly. "They're human beings who trusted you to do better." A long silence followed. Even Howard didn't have a retort. Laura looked around the table. "We can vote," she said, "but vote knowing that this choice will define what kind of company we are remembered as." The vote proceeded. Each hand raised felt heavier than the last. Finally, the results came in 6-5. Horizon stayed. Leah let out a quiet breath of relief. Maya gave Laura a small nod, gratitude flickering in her eyes. After the meeting, Laura walked Maya out. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "But I'm glad you did." "I didn't come to fight," Maya replied. "I came to remind them that progress doesn't belong to a balance sheet." That evening, Rachel Monroe was hosting her first ethics training at the Denver base. Rows of attendants filled the small conference room, their faces a mix of curiosity and defensiveness. Rachel began softly. "When I was standing at the front of Flight 237, I thought I understood professionalism. I didn't. I was following procedure without compassion." She paused, looking around. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to tell you that unlearning prejudice takes courage, and I'm still learning every day." A young attendant in the front row raised her hand. "Weren't you scared?" "Facing Dr. Caldwell after everything." Rachel smiled faintly, terrified, but she didn't destroy me. She gave me a mirror. The hard part wasn't facing her, it was facing myself. As the room grew quiet, Captain Ethan Ward entered quietly, taking a seat in the back. When Rachel noticed him, she smiled warmly. "And I'm not the only one who learned. Captain Ward, would you say a few words?" The pilot stood, his voice calm and steady. "When you've been flying 20 years, you start thinking you've seen it all. Turns out, I'd spent most of my life cruising above the real lessons." Laughter rippled lightly through the room. He continued, "Change is like turbulence. It shakes you, makes you uncomfortable, but if you hold steady, you land safer than before." Rachel looked down at her notes, smiling. When the session ended, the attendants lined up to thank her. Some hugged her. Others simply said, "I needed that." For the first time in months, Rachel felt peace, something earned, not given. Meanwhile, Marcus Dale sat in a dim newsroom, editing his next piece. The headline glowed on his screen, "The Flight That Changed How We Fly." He paused before hitting publish, rereading the last line. Change didn't come from anger, it came from grace in motion. He smiled, whispering to himself, "That's Maya's line." As he sent the article live, he received a message from Maya herself. "Keep telling the story. People forget fast." He replied, "Not this one." Back in Boston, Maya stood alone at the Metavant's rooftop garden. The city stretched endlessly before her, lights flickering like distant fires. Leah joined her, handing over a folder. "Final numbers," Leah said. "Bias complaints are down across every airline involved in Horizon. Employee satisfaction up 30%. It's working. Maya." Maya took the folder but didn't open it. "It's a start," she said softly. "But justice isn't a program. It's a practice." Leah nodded. "Still, you should be proud." Maya smiled faintly. "Pride isn't what I'm after. Legacy is down below." The hum of the city echoed like a heartbeat. For a long moment, she said nothing, just watched the skyline fade into the night. Then, almost to herself, she whispered, "One flight, one moment, and look how far we've flown." Leah glanced at her, eyes bright with admiration. "You think the world's finally listening?" Maya turned toward her, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "Not yet," she said, "but at least now, they can't say they didn't hear." It was late autumn in Boston, 6 months after the reforms took root. The air carried that bittersweet mix of chill and promise, and the headlines had finally begun to shift from outrage to reflection. Dr. Maya Caldwell sat in her office, the morning light painting soft gold across her desk. The past months had been a marathon: meetings, interviews, public hearings, but for the first time in a long while, she felt still. Leah entered with a cautious smile. Coffee, headlines, and a small miracle. Maya raised an eyebrow. Miracle first. Leah set a folder on the desk. Skylinks just won the Aviation Ethics Leadership Award. First in the industry's history. Maya exhaled softly. They earned it. Laura fought harder than anyone to keep that promise. She did. Leah agreed. But you lit the fire. Maya. Before Maya could reply, her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Call me ASAP. Something's coming. Her calm cracked just slightly. Leah, patch Marcus through. Moments later, his voice came through the speaker, tense but controlled. Maya, there's a problem. A serious one. What kind? There's been an incident, Marcus said. A Skylinks regional flight. Racial profiling again, this time by a manager who claims Horizon training went too far. The passenger filmed everything. It's spreading fast. Maya's pulse quickened. We're Atlanta, Marcus replied. I've seen the footage. It's bad. Leah's face paled. After everything we've done. Maya stood, grabbing her coat. Then we'll go remind them what we stand for. Oh. By that evening, Maya and Leah were walking through Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Reporters swarmed near Gate 42 where the confrontation had happened earlier that day. The hum of cameras and murmurs filled the air like static. Marcus met them near security, phone in hand. The passenger, a black college professor, was accused of using a stolen ticket. The manager didn't even check the manifest before calling security. Leah clenched her fists. That's exactly what Horizon was built to prevent. Maya's gaze hardened. Then we'll show them that failure is still part of growth, but not one we'll ignore. Inside the Skylinks lounge, Laura Bennett was already waiting. Her usually poised expression was replaced by exhaustion. Maya, I swear I didn't know until it hit the feeds. We're investigating. I'm not here for apologies, Maya interrupted softly. I'm here for solutions. Laura nodded. We suspended the manager, but the damage is done. People are saying Horizon failed. Maya shook her head. No, Horizon didn't fail. People did. Systems only work when hearts engage. Rachel Monroe entered moments later. Still in her training uniform, she had flown in from Denver the moment she saw the video. Let me talk to the crew, she said. They'll listen to me. Maya looked at her, recognizing the quiet determination in her eyes. Be honest with them. Don't preach. Just remind them why we started. Rachel nodded and headed down the hall. In the small crew room, flight attendants huddled together, defensive, uncertain. Some scrolled through social media. Others whispered about the fallout. When Rachel stepped in, silence followed. She took a deep breath. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here because I know what it feels like to be the face of failure. I was once the one making excuses. A young attendant looked up. But we went through the training. We did everything right. Rachel's tone stayed calm. Doing things right isn't the same as doing what's human. Protocol doesn't excuse perception. The words settled heavy in the room. She continued, voice low but clear. When Dr. Caldwell stood on that plane months ago, she didn't demand punishment, she asked for awareness. That's all we're being asked for. Awareness, not perfection. One of the senior attendants nodded slowly. Maybe we forgot that along the way. Rachel's eyes softened. Then let's remember it again together. Meanwhile, Maya met with Laura and Marcus in a quiet conference room overlooking the runway. The sun dipped low, washing the tarmac in red and gold. "This video will undo everything if we don't act fast," Marcus warned. "People love redemption stories, but they love scandal more." Maya paced slowly. "Then we respond with truth. No hiding, no spin." Laura looked uneasy. "Are you suggesting we go public again?" "Yes," Maya said firmly. "I'll address it personally. The moment we stop being accountable, Horizon becomes just another corporate slogan." Leah nodded. "We'll live stream it." "From here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're really doing this?" Live Maya's eyes met his. "The sky doesn't hide its storms. Neither will we." An hour later, the live stream began. Reporters filled the lounge as cameras went live to millions. Maya stood before them, no podium, no script, just presence. 6 months ago, she began. "We promised the world that change could take flight. Today, we were reminded that change doesn't move in straight lines. It stumbles, it struggles, but it never stops." She paused, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The incident in Atlanta wasn't a failure of policy. It was a reminder that equality isn't a one-time achievement. It's a daily practice, and that practice begins with humility. Laura stepped forward beside her, adding, "Skylinks takes full responsibility. We will retrain every staff member, from executive to intern. Not because we're perfecting optics, but because we owe the world sincerity." Maya nodded. "We cannot promise a world without prejudice, but we can promise this: every mistake will be met with learning, not denial." The crowd was silent. The only sound, the quiet hum of cameras recording history once again. After the broadcast ended, Leah exhaled shakily. "You did it again. You turned chaos into clarity." Maya smiled faintly. "That's not power. That's responsibility." Ah. Later that night, in her hotel room, Rachel knocked gently before stepping in. The crew watched the live stream. She said, "They cried. Some of them asked to redo their Horizon certifications voluntarily." Maya looked up, surprised but pleased. Voluntarily, Rachel nodded. "They said they finally get it." Maya's expression softened. "Good. That means the message still has wings." Rachel hesitated before speaking again. "Do you ever get tired?" "Maya, fighting this fight every day." Maya leaned back, looking out the window at the quiet plains beyond. "Every day," she said honestly. "But then I remember what the sky taught me. Flight doesn't happen without resistance." Rachel smiled. "Then I guess we'll just keep flying." Maya met her gaze and returned the smile. "Yes, until the sky's the same for everyone." The two women stood there for a moment, watching the runway lights blink against the night. A quiet promise between them. Outside, a plane lifted into the darkness, its path steady, unbroken, reaching toward a horizon that never stopped expanding. 2 weeks after the Atlanta incident, winter began to settle over the East Coast. The media storm had quieted, but the weight of it all still lingered. Despite exhaustion, Dr. Maya Caldwell's resolve hadn't dimmed, it had only deepened. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass window of Medivant's headquarters. Outside, snowflakes drifted softly, painting the city white. Behind her, Leah entered with her usual quiet grace, a folder in hand. They confirmed the schedule. Leah said, "Tomorrow's flight to Seattle will be Horizon's first joint mission with 3 airlines. You'll be on board as keynote speaker." Maya turned, the faintest smile on her lips. Seattle. Fitting. Isn't it? The city of rain rebirth? Leah chuckled. "You should put that in your speech." Maya shook her head gently. No, words lose meaning when they're rehearsed. I'll just speak from where it hurts and heals. Leah hesitated. You sure you're ready to fly again? After everything, Maya's eyes softened. I never stopped flying. Leah, I just changed altitudes. The next morning, dawn stretched gold over Boston Logan Airport. At Gate 11, cameras lined the walls as the Horizon flight prepared for takeoff. It was no ordinary flight. It carried executives, activists, students, and crew from different backgrounds, all gathered to celebrate a new era of accountability and unity. Marcus Dale stood among the reporters, his notebook open. 1 year ago, he whispered to his cameraman, this woman was humiliated in an airplane seat. Today, she's redefining what it means to take one. Maya walked toward the jet bridge, her navy coat buttoned neatly, expression calm. Rachel Monroe and Captain Ethan Ward waited near the entrance, both smiling warmly. Ready for takeoff, Ethan asked, his tone light but reverent. Maya nodded, more ready than I was the first time. Rachel handed her a lanyard badge, white letters on a blue ribbon. Flight of tomorrow. You'll sit in 1A again, she said softly. Poetic, isn't it? Maya's lips curved slightly. Let's hope history doesn't rhyme too closely. Once on board, the energy was electric. Passengers exchanged stories. Laughter filled the aisles, and the crew moved with practiced ease. Rachel took her role seriously, but carried a glow of quiet pride. At 10:12 a.m., the aircraft lifted gracefully from the runway. Applause erupted as the ground fell away below. Maya watched the clouds unfold outside her window, her heart swelling with something that felt like peace. Moments later, Rachel approached her seat. Dr. Caldwell, they'd like you to address the passengers whenever you're ready. Maya stood slowly, smoothing her blazer, then turned to face the cabin. Her voice, calm and resonant, filled the air. Good morning, everyone. A year ago, a flight like this could have ended in silence and shame. But today, we rise on the wings of something stronger understanding. The passengers quieted, listening closely. I didn't create Horizon to fix people. She continued, I created it to remind us what we forget, that humanity is not a checklist, and compassion is not a policy. It's a daily choice. She paused, eyes sweeping across the rows. Each of you represents that choice. Every seat on this plane is a promise that we can be better, together. As she sat down, applause thundered through the cabin. Rachel blinked back tears. Ethan adjusted his cap and murmured to his co-pilot, That's the kind of turbulence I can live with. Hours later, turbulence of a different kind hit littoral this time. The plane jolted sharply, causing gasps. The captain's calm voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We've hit an unexpected pressure front. Rachel rushed down the aisle, securing trays and reassuring passengers. Maya held her armrest but stayed calm. Steady, she whispered to herself. Within minutes, the cabin steadied again. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by clapping when the captain announced clear skies ahead. Leah, sitting 2 rows behind, leaned forward and whispered, Even the sky wanted a little drama. Maya chuckled quietly. Growth never comes smooth. Leah, even the clouds resist before they clear. When they landed in Seattle, cameras awaited once again. A banner stretched across the arrival gate. The future takes flight. Laura Bennett greeted Maya at the terminal, eyes bright. "You did it," she said. "They said reform would crash before it could take off. You proved them wrong." "I didn't do it alone," Maya replied. "The truth never travels solo." As they walked through the terminal, reporters pressed forward with questions. But Maya stopped briefly for one young journalist who looked nervous. "Dr. Caldwell," the woman asked, "how do you keep believing in people when they keep disappointing you?" Maya smiled kindly. "Because disappointment means I still expect better. The moment I stop expecting, I stop believing." The young woman nodded, her eyes shining. That evening, a gala was held in downtown Seattle, a celebration of Horizon's first anniversary. The room glittered with lights and conversation. Rachel, Ethan, Leah, and Marcus sat together near the front, proud but quiet as Maya took the stage. Her speech was simple, heartfelt. "1 year ago, I was asked what justice looks like," she began. "I didn't have an answer then. I do now. Justice looks like accountability wrapped in empathy. It looks like second chances lived out loud." She glanced toward Rachel. "It looks like forgiveness that rebuilds rather than erases." Applause spread slowly, growing into a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, but Maya barely noticed. For her, the applause wasn't noise. It was the echo of something larger, collective awakening. When she stepped off the stage, Marcus approached. "You realize this story doesn't end here?" "Right." Maya smiled faintly. "Good stories never do. They ripple." Later that night, as the city quieted, Maya found herself on the hotel rooftop. The stars were faint, hidden behind mist, but one shone bright enough to catch her eye. Leah joined her with 2 mugs of tea. "You know," Leah said, "when this started, I thought it would just be another corporate campaign, but it became something else, something living." Maya took a slow sip. "Because it stopped being about me. It became about everyone who ever felt unseen." Leah looked out over the skyline. "You think the world's finally learned?" Maya smiled wistfully. "The world doesn't learn all at once. But maybe now, it listens a little longer before it forgets." For a moment, they stood together in the cold night air, the silence between them warm with understanding. Down below, the city lights blinked like distant constellations, each one a small story of change. Somewhere, a plane roared into the dark sky, carrying people toward tomorrow, and as Maya watched it ascend, she whispered softly, "May every flight find its horizon." The story of Dr. Maya Caldwell reminds us that dignity doesn't come from titles, wealth, or recognition. It comes from how we carry ourselves when we are tested. In a world still divided by bias and fear, Maya showed that strength and grace are not opposites, they are partners. She didn't fight hatred with anger. She met it with clarity, compassion, and accountability. For older generations, this story is a quiet echo of lessons long known that real change takes patience, wisdom, and courage to do what's right, even when it costs us comfort. Maya's journey teaches us that progress begins in the smallest choices, in listening before judging, in standing firm without cruelty, in forgiving without forgetting. It's a reminder that respect isn't given by systems, it's built by people. And sometimes, the most powerful revolution begins not with a raised voice, but with a steady heart that refuses to bow to injustice. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with us. Every view, every comment, and every story you share helps us keep telling the tales that move hearts and open minds. If Dr. Maya Caldwell's story touched you today, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps our stories flying and together. We'll keep reminding the world that compassion is the highest form of strength.